So with all the other content on the site, most of it's done through this content add content thing, right? I actually have a few extra things here, but for the most part, like when you add content, it's through there. And if you've ever worked with forms on Drupal 7, they would be in here as well. Because Drupal 8 has to be a little different, you know, it's actually under structure here. So all the way at the bottom, I have this web forms.
Oh, yeah.
Button. I couldn't tell you why it's under structure as opposed to content, but at least the really nice thing about it is when I click on it, it'll actually list all my web forms in one place here. So they're kind of just separated out. So at least you don't have to like go digging through a whole, like if I go to content, there's like this whole list of all the pages on the site, you know, so at least you can see all the web forms in one place, which is nice. Yeah.
Wow.
So let's just you know, let's go through as if we're creating a new form.
Okay.
So, because for the most part, after the first step, it's going to be the same as if I go to like edit one of these forms. And again, it's edit everywhere else on the site, but here it's got to be build for whoever made the module. Just had to change up the terminology there. So basically, after this very first screen, it's going to be the same. So right here, if we're adding a new web form, I got to give it a title. So I'm going to call this test web form. And then this description and categories, they're things that can show up out here on this this kind of grid list or table, I guess. If it's really optional, if it helps you identify stuff, you can go ahead and add them. I think most people are probably fine just leaving them as is. So test web form here, and I want it to be open by default. So I'm just going to hit save and continue on. And then it's going to bring me to a new screen. And this is basically that the editing interface where we add everything that we want to the form. If it's a question on someone's first name, this is where we're going to add it. So if I take a moment and go back to that web forms main screen here, it loads. Okay. So if I actually go down to test web form and hit build over here, it's going to bring me to that same screen. So it's like I said, it's basically once you get past that first screen, it's going to be the same, whether you're making a new form or editing one that already exists. In the case of the new form, of course, we don't have any questions added to the form already. So to add questions, it's basically, we're just going to go to this add element button. And then it's going to give us a list of everything that we can add to the form here. Now, sometimes it's not quite so clear just based on the names over here, what an element looks like. So if I hit show preview up here, it gives me kind of like a sneak peek of what fields show as in here. So just kind of scrolling down, you can see it's put examples up for everything. And it looks like a lot, but we'll go through it pretty fast here. So, so this first one, text field and text area, these are just basic text inputs. You can see text field is just a single line of text, whereas text area is a bigger one that's also expandable like that. So text field is good for things like first and last name. So I'm going to hit add element, and I'm going to go and put in first name right here and hit save. And now we have our very first question. So if I go hit view up here, view always brings me to the live version of a page. You can see that we have our first name question down here. So I'm going to head back to build. And let's add a last name on here. Right there. Last name, and kind of to speed things up a little bit, what we can also do instead of hitting save is hit save plus add element, and this basically just brings us straight back to that interface where we can pick things. It just saves one button click over here. Okay. So really quick way to do that. The text area, this is good for something like comments, because that generally is usually something you need a larger text area for. Let me hit save on that one as well. And now we have our first three questions on here. I want to make sure that someone has to answer first and last name over here. So I'm going to hit off required over here on the side. Usually comments aren't required, so I'm not going to bother with that. And then if I make changes on this page, I have to hit save elements. Otherwise, it's not going to change anything. So now when I go out to view, I have my first and last name questions, and they're denoted with these red asterisks right here to show that they're required. Okay. So after this, we have our advanced elements. I'm going to go over this CAPTCHA at the end, but email is probably the very easiest one. It's pretty similar to text field in its look, except that it'll actually check for the format of an email. So if you don't put an @ sign or something dot whatever, it's gonna throw an error and tell the person that they need to actually format their email as an actual email right here. The only thing it can't do is make someone put in an @osu.edu. Unfortunately, that's not really a feature of this particular type, but we can do a few things if we want to prompt someone to do that. So first of all, if I name the field OSU email, right there, that already makes it a little more obvious. And then down here under form display, so quick note, there's these 3 little accordions here, as well as some tabs up top, and these all house like extra settings, and for the most part they're really niche, so I'm not going to go over them except for this one right here. But if there's something weird you need to do on a form, let me know, and sometimes it's like somewhere deep in this advanced section, like under like element attributes or something weird on there. So that's mostly what those are used for. However, under form display, on every single field that we can add, there's this placeholder field right here. So this basically puts in a grayed out bit of text or whatever. So in this case, I want to put name.number@osu.edu in there. And that can kind of just show someone the format that I'm expecting in email. I'm going to make sure it's required and hit save. And let's go view this. So at the bottom here, we should have this name.number@osu.edu. And then when I start typing, it'll disappear. So kind of an easy way to prompt someone to actually put that in. Because unfortunately, you can't check for it.
Yeah.
So we've got a few extra fields here. Scale actually shouldn't be showing. There was an update recently that added this, and it's for something unrelated, and I have not taken the time to get rid of it yet. So it's a little confusing at the moment, but this should not be here. We do have number up here, so if you need someone to add a number into a form, like say number of siblings, I guess. Don't know why you'd ask that, but if you do, you can use number to do that. So basically, it's going to be it's going to be like a similar setup to the text field, except you can only enter actual numbers in there. So if I'm like asking someone for a number of siblings, right here, we can set a minimum and maximum here for number of siblings. We probably want it to be positive, so the minimum would be 0 to make it positive numbers, and then I guess they could have like 100 siblings, so we could leave that maximum blank right there. And then I'm going to hit save. And this looks a little bit different on the actual form than a text field, because it has these little arrow buttons over here that increase by 1 each time.
Oh.
Okay, so the last 2 here, telephone and URL, I'm going to go ahead and say maybe don't use these for the moment. There seems to be some weird bugs with both of these fields. Telephone is not correctly detecting the user country, and it keeps throwing like an error out, and I haven't been able to figure out exactly why it's doing that one. Okay. So if you need to take a telephone, it's probably best to just stick with the text field for the time being. And then same with URL. This one's actually not really a bug so much that, however the module maker for this coded it, it makes you put in the HTTP or HTTPS on the front of a URL. So if you're asking someone for like their personal website or whatever, and they put in www.mypersonalsite.com, it's going to throw them an error because it didn't include that HTTP, and it's really frustrating for that user. So for that one, also probably a good idea to just use a text field for the time being. Next, we have address, and this one actually combines a bunch of fields into one here. So this one's pretty unique compared to all the other fields on the form. right here, I'm going to use the example of if we want them to have to put in a local address, maybe wherever they live around campus. Now under here, we have these address settings, and I can actually choose which fields are visible to the user. So for instance, if it's a local address, we probably don't need to have them put in a country because we're kind of expecting them to live around campus in this case. So I'm going to uncheck that and hit save. And I'm going to check this one off as required. Now there's kind of a caveat with the required checkbox on this particular field. So if we scroll down here, you'll see that none of these address fields actually have that red asterisk on it, right? So this is because I think the reason why this is done is because since it's adding more than one field, it doesn't know which ones you need to be actually required, right? So not everybody necessarily lives in an apartment, so it's not really going to know if you necessarily need to require address line 2, right? Because that's usually apartment or room number or something along those lines. So if I actually go to edit this particular field that we just put in, down on the side here, there's actually a separate required box for each field. So address line 1's always required because that one's a street address. And then, like I said, line 2, it's not always expected that someone lives in an apartment or anything, so I'm not going to check that off. I'll check off city, state, postal code, stuff like that. So all those will be required, but address line 2 will not. And now when we actually go and look at this, it should have those red asterisks on each of the fields that we marked off. Right? So that one can be a little confusing because it just functions slightly different than everything else. It does make sense why they did it that way, though. So I'm going to skip markup elements for a second and come back to that at the end when we go back to CAPTCHA as well. And then the next section are the multiple choice. This one's a little bit confusing, but I think I think I kind of have it down how to make it a bit more sense, make a bit more sense. So we have checkboxes, radios, and select right here. So in the old Drupal 7, it was all one thing, which was called select options. In Drupal 8, it's kind of broken out into different things, and I think it's a better approach because it kind of highlights the differences a little bit more. So checkboxes up here, this is your multiple select. So if I need someone to be able to select more than one item, you can see I can check off each one of these little things in the preview, and then I could submit it. So like if I am asking someone whether they sent 2 different items in or something like that, PDFs or whatever to an advising office, I can do it here. If I'm going to ask someone like what academic rank they are, like freshman, sophomore, junior, I would probably want to use radios because those ones are the single select item right there. Okay. And then select is the drop down. And basically this is the same as radios up here, except it kind of makes things more compact. So especially in the case when we had that state field in the address, that was actually a select field that was built into address because there's so many states, right? You don't want someone to just have to scroll through this huge list of items in radios. So that's why you would want to choose select over radios, is because it kind of makes things a little more compact on the form. So let's just go with the academic rank because that's always an easy example, and I'm just going to use radios for that. So I'm going to hit add element, and I'm going to put in academic rank for the title. And my options are going to be freshman, sophomore, junior, and then I'm going to add one more option because that will be senior. I'm going to hit save. And let's say that I've added this this academic rank. I can actually, don't want to go to the content page. If I go view this right now, I can see that each of my options is available down here. So freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. However, maybe I actually want another option. Maybe for some reason someone doesn't fit into one of those categories, so we needed another. Well, instead of actually going back to add element here and just remaking the thing with the checkboxes other, radios other, or select other, I can actually go in and change the radio button really quickly. So if I go to edit, there's this change icon up here, and I can click on that, and it lets me select what other things it can actually convert this to. So radios other is the first one, so let's change to that. And then basically all this does is add an other field that will pop up if someone selects other. So I'm gonna check this off to make sure it's required as well. And let's refresh this. And so we've got this other added automatically down there. And if I click it, it brings up a text field that you can enter whatever text you need to into. So a really simple way of doing that. After the options here, I just have a few more fields. So we've got date, time, and date/time, which basically just combines both of them together. So date right here. This one is pretty straightforward. The only weird thing about this field, and so let's say we're asking someone the date they're returning from a education abroad program. The only weird thing about this one is if you check off use date picker, it actually gives you a worse date picker than the default. I don't know why it does that, but so if I leave this unchecked right here and I hit save, you can see there's actually already a default date picker, and I don't know why they decided to build their own and make it worse, but they did. So I would recommend not checking that off. So if I go right here, you can see there's actually a date picker built in already. So that's a weird quirk with that one, and actually time also has the same issue. So that one I would also not check off use time picker. One more thing with time though is by default it's in 24-hour format, and I think most American students are probably more comfortable with 12-hour at least. So that's probably one that you want to change. So you got the AM and PM right there. And of course for both of those we can have minimum and maximum dates as well. And actually that date field specifically is pretty flexible right here. So if we say we only want dates from January 1st, 2021, and then maybe a date maximum of plus 3 years from the date that this is submitted or whatever, we could do that. Or we could just put in, we only want dates from 2 months ago to 2 months from now. So those are pretty flexible fields as well. There's actually this whole page that it will link to under this little question mark thing, this GNU date input, which will show you all the weird ways you can put things in. And then you can also select off specific days of the week that you want people to be able to select. So if you only want Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, you could check those off and uncheck the others as well. All right, just a few more fields here. Let's address files, since that's our last question that people can actually answer. This one that says generic element down here, this doesn't do anything. It has to be enabled, otherwise it breaks the form. So I could not hide it, unfortunately. But yeah, that one just, it really doesn't do anything. So that one you just want to ignore. For files though, this is how we can actually have people upload files to the page. So specifically, this is very good for like requests for proposals for research conferences, right? And for the most part, we can actually ignore all this weird stuff in here. There's a couple things we do want to pay attention to. This allowed file extensions. For research proposals, we probably only want PDFs, so I'm just gonna get rid of the other stuff on here. And basically this only allows files in whatever formats are on here to be uploaded. If you have something different, you can add in whatever you want. So if I wanted Adobe Illustrator, I could add in AI. If I wanted people to upload zip files, I can put in zip there as well. And then down here, there's a sanitized file name button. And this is probably more relevant to your department than anybody else because this will actually take any special characters and turn them into dashes. And the reason why this is good is because not all web servers can handle foreign language characters very well in file names. And we had this problem on Pathway to Korean where files have been uploaded with Korean characters and the web server kind of locked them down so that nobody could really download them. And the developers had to go in and get them off. And it was a big deal. So this really helps out if you check off sanitized file name there. So I'm gonna hit save. And our last field is added down here. I want to make sure I check off anything that's required before I send this form out to people to get signed. And then we have our couple fields that are just visual fields, right? So these markup elements are fields that only show up visually on the form. They're not actually questions that people can enter answers to. So for instance, if we needed some instructions at the very top of the form, we would use this advanced HTML/text because this is just a kind of a basic text area on the form. So if I hit add element, I can add in whatever I need to on here. So it's like a thank you, remember to include this on the form, like something like that. And maybe you have some bullet points under here. So bullet 1, bullet 2, bullet 3. 3 on there. So now we've got some text and we can add it to the top of the form. Now you'll notice that there is this weird field in there that said process text. So this is another thing that's a little weird to explain about Drupal 8 web forms. So every other field on here we entered the title in for. Unfortunately, this one, the people who created it just want you to enter this thing called a key. And you can also see that kind of showing up for all the other fields in this column. And this is just how the Drupal system works with the form, how it like makes sure everything is associated to whatever values it needs to be on the back end. So this is more of a machine-facing name in here. So you can leave this as process text if you want. It's totally fine. You see it came out as process text over here. However, it can help you identify other advanced HTML area, like differentiate them if you do change the name on here. So if I say need some instructions for the file field down there, I could call this file_instructions like that. It's like remember to add this to the file, something like this. Now, I know that probably was a little bit confusing. Do you guys have any questions on the keys right there?
No, the upload field was great. That was fast. It's going to be trial and error for me, I think.
Yeah.
Is there a way we can access this video again, just as a reference?
Yeah, like I said, if this thing records, like I'm hoping it says it's recording, so hopefully I can just upload that to YouTube and share it with you as well.
I'll definitely reuse it if you do send us that link. Yeah.
All right, so just really quickly, the other two markup elements on here. Message is basically the same as advanced HTML. It's just colored. Right, so that can actually add a little bit of visual interest to whatever you need on the form or make something kind of pop out. So if I add this, I can put like, oh, maybe I wanted to call this message. See, this also uses that key. All of these just text fields that just show text use the key thing, which is really annoying, but it works the same as over here. So like message for student or something on there. And I can use this. So if the message type is the color on there, so status is green, error is red, warning is yellow, and info is blue. So if I wanted to show them like a blue thing that said attention, please review this form or something at the end, I can do that really quickly. Let me bold that and hit save. Can have that at the bottom. So if I go and view the form now, you can see there's going to be some colored text down there.
That'd be good for cancellation policy.
Yeah. So now it's a little bit more of like a visual, like pops in someone and grabs someone's attention when they're looking at the form. So that, yeah, it could be very useful for if you need to highlight something, make sure someone actually really knows that cancellation policy exists, right?
Yes.
The other one on there was horizontal rule. And I know it shows up as the dots for some reason in the preview, but it's really just a line. It puts a line somewhere in the form. So if you need to divide things out, that can be helpful for you. And then down here, we've got field set. I really wish it was included up there, but it's down here. Basically, this just groups fields together visually. So not only can it kind of help a person who's taking the form to like know some fields are related, but on the back end here, it can actually help group things together as well in this editing interface. So for instance, this last name, first name, the email, that's all personal information, I guess. So I can call this field set personal information, hit save. And then I can drag this right here up above first name. And I can drag first name, last name, the email in there, the number of siblings, maybe the address, the academic rank. And now all of this, when I hit save, so not only is it grouped back here, but it's also grouped visually out on the form as well. So just kind of helps keep things a bit organized. If you think that helps out a lot. I think it helps out personally if I'm making a form. So it also gives you this add element directly on the field set. So instead of adding everything to the very bottom of the form like it usually does when you hit add element, this can just add it directly to the bottom of the field set as well. If you're working with a really large form, that's really helpful on there. So those are actually all of the fields and items that you can add onto a form. Do you guys have any questions over those before I move on?
Not right now.
That's totally fine as well. If you do have more questions, you can always email me. And so I'll just try to send something right away to answer anything. One thing I don't think you guys are gonna really need this, but if you have a huge form, so I'm talking like, I don't know if you guys have ever been over to Linguistics' site, but they've got this Slice application for their summer program, and it is massive. So they kind of use multiple pages to break things up in there. Basically, you can add more than one page via this Add Page button, and they function basically just like these field sets on here. Again, I think for the most part, most people are fine with just a single page form. But if you do run into that situation where you have this huge form and it's visually a lot for someone to take in at once, you can always break it up with multiple pages if you need to. So after this, we have a few other things over here, testing the form, results of the form, and settings for the form on there. And we can actually get to all of those as well really quickly if we're on the forms page out here. In this drop down, we have all the same settings that we can get to. So we've got the build, view, results, settings, all that stuff. So it's really easy to access there. As well as you can also click on the number of results to get to that particular page as well. So that's actually what we're going to cover next is results. So I'm actually going to go to TCI registration because there has been no submissions to our test form right here. So if we scroll down, we can actually see that there's all the information from the form is just shown on this particular table. And then we can also download the results as well in an Excel file. There is one thing that happens. It's a real weird thing that happens. So if I hit download here, and I'm hoping this switches over the screen to this Excel file if I open it up. Hopefully, yeah. So no, sharing is paused. Okay.
Oh, wait.
You can't see it, but it says the file is corrupted. Do you want to open it anyway? You can just hit yes, and it will open the file actually. So I don't know why it says it's corrupted, because it really isn't corrupted. It just says it is. But you can open it and resave it and it'll be fine. So that's just one thing I want to make sure I point out, because it sounds like it's bad, but it's not. It's not a bad thing. One thing, if you have a form with files uploaded to it, and this one, I think it does. So I go out to build here and check. Yeah, there's a file right here. If we want all of those files to be downloaded with the submissions as well, down here there's this checkbox to download uploaded files. So I want to check that one off. And it's going to ask you for the archive file type. Zip is probably the most common thing, so I would just leave it as that. I think we have to hit save settings, because I think last time I tried it, it didn't work unless you saved right here. So now that we've done that, and this is checked off, I can hit download, and it should download me a zip file. It may actually take a little bit because there's a lot of submissions. Okay, so it's downloaded a zip file right here, and basically that will just have the Excel file and then a folder labeled with each submission number that includes whatever files they uploaded. So if they had 5 file fields and uploaded 5 PDFs, all 5 of them would be in the submission 1 folder for the first user, the submission 2 folder for the second person as well. So that's how you can get all the files really easy at once. And that's a big upgrade over Drupal 7, because I don't want to get into the nightmare that files were to download from forms in Drupal 7, but it was bad. So that's the easy way to do that one specifically. So we can also clear out a form. I'm not going to do it, so don't worry about that. But if we say this is, I don't know if TCI is something that goes on all year, but potentially say it's a form that you want to reuse for a program next year, and maybe it's over already this year.
No.
Well, we probably don't want all those old submissions to be kind of mixed in with the new ones, right? So we could just go to yes, I want to clear all the submissions, and then hit clear, and it would wipe them all out. We could just reuse the form next year and have like a brand new clean slate to go on. So,
Okay.
real easy way to do that. I will point out one thing with the submissions in just a second, though, when you do that. And it's more of a pet peeve of mine. So not something that's super important, but it could be useful. So this is back on our test form. So we just went over results. Now let's kind of go over testing the actual form, right? Because when we make a form, we probably want to make sure that it actually does what we want. So I'm going to go to test right here. And this is really nice because it actually fills in all of the fields for me with dummy information. And it even puts a blank file into this file field as well, which is really, really nice. I think if it's not a zip file, it puts in like doc files or whatever type of file that you specified should be uploaded. And it's just going to be like a blank file with some gibberish, but it makes it easy to test this as well. So
can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
Because I know one of the things when we talked to Ava about was having kind of an automatic email once a form is complete.
Yes.
Is that something we're going over too?
Yes, we'll go over that. And actually, it's nice that you brought that up, because if you test a form this way, it will fire those automatic emails so you can make sure they're working.
Okay, good.
Which is good.
Cool.
So that is actually located under settings here. So that's where we're going next. There's a bunch of subcategories and settings. So it looks like a lot of stuff. So you can see like there's all this form, submissions, confirmation, the emails one, which you just talked about and stuff. However, there's only really one useful item in each, and the rest is real niche. Unfortunately, there's no kind of way to simplify that for you guys, but I will show you the specific thing that's useful in each one. So this first one, general, down here, we have this web form URL alias field. Now, if I actually go and view the live version of this page really quick, you can see that the URL is /form/the title, which is fine, I think, for a lot of people, but potentially you want a form that's at well, for instance, for that TCI registration, maybe you wanted it to be at just cllc.osu.edu/TCI or something really simple, you know? So you can actually change that particular URL via this field. So for instance, maybe I wanted this one to be like /my-really cool form, something like that. You can just put that in the web form URL alias and hit save. I'm gonna hit X on this little web form zip file thing at the bottom. And now I actually have to close that old page and go back to view. And you can see that my URL is now the new one up here. So again, having it at /form/the title might be totally fine for routine things, but if you ever need to change it, that is the way to do it on there. Now form over here is a little bit more interesting. This is actually where we have the form be open and closed. So specifically, if something has passed and I don't want someone to be able to submit more submissions to a particular form, I can come in here and close it. I can even schedule a form to open and close. And then I can have messages for each state as well. So if you need a specific message for when a form is open as opposed to being closed, you can add those in here. And then once I check off one of those things, I want to make sure to save it. And I only point that out because it's a really long way down the page, unfortunately, the save button. So that's just one thing to remember up here. Under submissions, this one is this is what I was talking about, my pet peeve with results earlier. So actually, if I go to results right here, and I have the one test submission in here, right here that we just submitted. So if I actually clear that out and hit yes, I want to clear the submissions, should reload. So we have no submissions in here now. You would, and if I submit a new submission to this form, you would kind of expect the submission to come in at number 1, right? Yeah. Unfortunately, it's going to come in at number 2. So it really doesn't matter that much unless you're me, and it kind of does bother you. But you can come in here to settings, submissions, and change the next submission number back to 1, and it will start over with the numbering. So for instance, if you had an RSVP form for an event and you want to reuse it next year and it had 100 submissions previously, when you clear out all the submissions and someone submits another RSVP, it's going to come in at 101. So this can just kind of help you reset it back to 1. It really doesn't matter that much, but if you're more like me and it kind of grinds on you a bit, you can come in here and reset that after you clear things out. So that's the only particular useful setting on the submissions page right here. Next, we've got confirmation. And this just lets us put text at the end of a form. So if I kind of scroll down, I have this confirmation title and message. If you see when we do a test, the end message is pretty generic looking. So I'm gonna kind of scroll down and hit submit on here. So it says the form title and says new submission added, which is it's okay, but if you want to spice that up, you can come in here to confirmation message and say something like, thank you, your submission has been received. Maybe you include some emails that someone can contact if they have a question or something along those lines. So this is where we can add that in. The title up here would just replace the web form title as well. So you could call it something like received with an exclamation point. And then when you do a test, it will show that particular message. So let me do that really quick just to illustrate. So I'm going to hit submit. So now it's changed to received. Thank you, your submission has been received on there. So much nicer, I think, message than just the default. Under emails and handlers, this is where you can add your automatic emails in. So we're going to hit add email. And let's say we just wanted to send one to the CLLC org account, the org email, because that's the easiest. So email to org. I'm actually going to leave this to email. This is where we choose where to send it alone, because site mail is the org address. And then I can also choose CCs and BCCs here. I always want to leave send from alone, because OCIO won't let your site send from anybody but your org address. So you have to leave it alone, otherwise it will break. And then your message right down here. The default here will tell you the date and the questions and answers for everything on the form. So if we're sending the result to our org account, this is probably totally fine. So I'm gonna hit save. And now we have an automatic email going, probably, I'm guessing yours is cllc@osu.edu. Yeah, okay. So now an email would go to that if the form is submitted again. If we want to change this up, say we want to send it to a specific person, we would choose custom to email address. And it just brings up an extra field that we can enter our custom address into. If we want to email it to the person who submitted the form, I'm going to choose their particular email field down here. So right here, we called it OSU email, but potentially you could have other emails as well, like parent or guardian emails, things like that. And then we can even get a little more fancy if we do academic rank. So that was our multiple choice. We can actually send to a different email based on what someone chose over here. So we could send sophomores to a different person than maybe seniors or juniors as well. One thing I want to note is, because this comes from your org address, if you hit reply to that, it's going to send it. It's going to send your reply to the org. So there's actually kind of a way to get around that if you want to be able to hit reply and reply to the person who submitted the form. So under advanced here, there is this reply to email, and you want to set that to whatever field they had their email come from right here. So I know that particular point can sometimes be a little confusing. Do you guys have questions on that specifically? Sounds like
no. It's just a lot to take in. Sorry.
Yeah, again, if you do run into issues, you can always send me an email. So don't think you have to like memorize completely every single thing.
I have it all memorized.
Yeah, so don't worry at all, because that's part of my job, right, is to help you guys, right? So
Thank you.
so with this reply to, I would just hit save, and then I would add my next email onto the field as well. So we can add, I think you can add up to 25 before it starts to like throw errors and stuff. So there's a lot of emails you can send at once from one form. And then the last two things here, you don't really have to worry about. So these ones